And I think like what like analytics has done is like I don't know if like you agree with me, but it kind of like takes away people from like actually like watching the game and stuff like that.
Oh,
Like
I completely agree.
yeah.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's part of the story. It's not. It's just not the whole story.
Hello and welcome to the Friday, December 11th edition of the TV on Basketball Podcast with your host TV. Hope you guys are having an awesome day and thank you for clicking on to watch or listen to this podcast. Before we start, I have to plug my other platforms. Remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for updates on the podcast and for some other great content. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe. That would be highly appreciated. And for all my podcast listeners, remember to subscribe and leave a review if you're on Apple. As for Spotify, Anchor, and Podbean listeners, remember to show your support any way possible, following, downloading, all that good stuff. And once again, thank you guys for all your support. I have a great show lined up for today. I'm going to be having another guest on. A lot of people know him as BolsteredUpSports on Instagram, on TikTok, and also he is also known as the BolsteredUpSports Podcast. I'm be joined by Brian, and we're going to be talking about stuff about his channel, about his life, talking some NBA basketball, just for example, the stuff with James Harden, and just other NBA stuff in general, including his thoughts on his Lakers winning the championship. So yeah, we have a really great show for you guys today. Thank you again for Brian for coming on. I'm gonna have all of his links down in the description of this video, and if you're seeing this on any of the podcast networks, just remember to click the link tree in my profile, and you can find all of his stuff there as well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. I'm gonna kick it over to my past self and Brian to take over this video, and hope you guys really do enjoy this. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another TV on Basketball collab. We have another guest, a different guest here for you today. We are joined by Bolstered Up Sports, as he is known by on Instagram, his podcast, all of his social media stuff. We have Brian here. How's it going, my guy?
I'm great. I appreciate you having me on. I followed your stuff. You're a basketball expert, so I've definitely got to recommend to everybody, if they're listening to this, make sure to check out everything that this guy's putting out. Great content.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you should definitely check this guy out. I'll have his links down in the description of this video if you're watching on YouTube. And I'll definitely have him in my link tree when I post the Instagram post up on Friday. He usually does a lot of NFL stuff and stuff like that. So he's coming into the basketball world, but I've been really liking his content, especially on his podcast. He's been doing a lot of stuff on TikTok, which we'll be getting into today. And yeah, we're just going to be talking about some basketball and just we just have a lot of topics to talk about. So let's get right into this. Brian, how has it been throughout these last 12 months? It's been crazy for everyone, man.
Oh, it's been crazy. As a football coach and as a teacher, It's been, completely flipped upside down. The schedule's been completely off. We're just now getting into our off-season workouts. Yeah. And hopefully we have a season. We'll see what happens. But it's been a big adjustment, I think, to say the least.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think a lot of us, especially sports lovers, especially in the beginning, it's been kind of tough. I mean, especially when all the short sports shut down and stuff. And now it feels like we can't get enough of them. I mean, the NFL is going on, the NBA is starting in a couple weeks. We just can't get enough of sports right now, and it's been really good. But how has it been being a teacher in this environment, online teaching, and even being a coach? How is that in this quarantine environment?
Well, it's been tough because, the reason I got into coaching, the reason I got into teaching was to work with students, build those relationships, right? Get to work on classroom culture, team culture, all of those things. Yeah. And adjusting to the online setting has made that difficult. It's made it, just a little bit less personable, right? Which is kind of one of the main driving forces for getting into it. But I think at the same time, it's presented a great opportunity for me to practice what I preach, right? Yeah. I'm having to face some adversity. I'm having to face some change. Some things are out of my control. How do I handle it? How do I bring a great attitude and effort every day. So I'm trying to think about it positively that way. And hopefully, again, like I mentioned, football workouts are starting to come back. Hopefully we're on the right side of this thing and we'll get it going.
Yeah, for sure. And like I always admire because like I'm in university myself, and these professors, honestly, they have it tough, especially in this environment. Like it's so much harder teaching. Like just like even getting to know the students. Like I remember like last year, like in my first year of university, like it was nice getting those like different relationship with your professors and stuff like that. And you could barely have that in this current COVID environment. It's been absolutely crazy. So kudos to you for like being able to like power through all this, man. Like it's absolutely crazy. But how's like coaching like? I mean, are you still having the practices? Are you still like how are you like conducting all these workouts and stuff for your team?
The rules are ever changing right now. I mean, we've literally just barely had the first off-season workout, so there's no gear, there's no nothing like that. Everybody's masked up, following all the protocols and kind of just doing what we can to be safe, to bring the kids back, build those relationships, have fun is kind of the focus, right? Introducing that team culture, some of that structure, but making sure that it's in a safe manner. We're going about things the right way. So hopefully we can have a season. Again, all that's up in the air. We'll just have to play it by ear and hope for the best.
Yeah. Like, is there like any like set like from like you're in the league that you're in, especially like in the high school like type leagues that you're coaching? Like, is there like any like set date that you have like that might be able to like start the season?
Yeah, there are set dates. Basically, the first games are going to be in mid-February. That's still an if, right? There's plans in place, but at the same time, rumors are swirling, which I try to block out. Yeah. It infused the Bill Belichick into myself and just block out any distractions, focus on what we can control, because if not, I think we'd just be worrying about it 24/7.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like it's hard for NFL coaches doing this. Now you're doing it with kids and everything. They must be kind of like, this is definitely all new to everyone. And like, it's just like, it's such like hard to just like work around this type of stuff as well. Especially, I mean, yes, we may have a virus coming out it's not the vaccine coming out maybe at the end of this month, start of next month, but we don't know how effective that's going to be. And hopefully you can get your student going, and hopefully you can, like you said, continue to build those relationships and make sure these kids like, get on the field. Let's talk about your podcast though, because I've been like following you for quite a bit now. I know we connected probably like a couple months back, and from what I've seen, like you started this podcast, I think back in April. Correct me if I'm wrong, around there.
Yeah, mid-April.
Yeah.
As essentially when the shutdown happened, had some free time and figured, hey, I love talking about it. Why don't I put it out there?
Yeah. So like what like really just like caused you to do this? Like was this something kind of like on your mind like kind of before the quarantine, or was it because like, man, I have so much time here, maybe I should just like try doing this, and then like, or something like that? Like how did it go for you?
I mean, I'd say it's always been a passion of mine, just talking about sports. I'll talk anybody's ear off, probably too much. All my friends, my family, my fiance, I just talk to anybody I can. So it's always been something I'm interested in, creating a podcast, being on the radio. Like that's always been kind of a dream in a sense. And this just opened up that door, the window of opportunity for the time, right?
Yeah.
And so I figured, why not take the chance? Might as well explore in this, because it's something that with the typical football season, typical schedule would have been much more difficult to take that first step, right? And that's kind of what I always tell my kids, the players at the same time. Taking that first step is often the hardest part.
Yeah.
In a way, again, there's a silver lining in every situation. You don't want to make light of a dark situation, but at the same time, everything's about how do you respond to adversity. And I chose to expound upon a passion of mine with the extra time.
Yeah, 100%. And I've had like people, even like during the pandemic, like some of my friends, some people I've connected with like through this podcast, who said like, how should I like start? And I just told them like, once you take that first step, like that's like when it starts like really like the ball starts rolling. Like once you start doing it, you're gonna figure out like what you like to do and what you don't like, and then it's just gonna keep on rolling. And that's when stuff starts like coming together, like your podcast, man. I mean, like you've like grown this thing you have like a lot of good listeners and stuff like that. For people listening to this who want to go onto your podcast, like what can they expect from you, and like what type of content you're going to bring out?
Yeah, so they can expect mainly basketball and football coverage.
Yeah.
I like to break things down from a different perspective, try to provide some of that coaching perspective in there, as well as some fun with the storylines. A lot of times I'll have my listeners, my followers submit questions, have mailbag episodes, but I try to do what I enjoy, which again is just having those conversations. Sometimes that's debate form. Sometimes it may not be quite as opposing, right? But I really enjoy those long form conversations.
Yeah.
Somebody that I listen to a lot, I like Bill Simmons, right?
Yeah.
I just like that format, as well as in putting in some different segments and having fun with it as well.
Well, yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Bill Simmons. Like I've like listened to his podcast quite a number of times as well. Like he does like a lot of good talks and stuff like that. Um, it seems like you're an avid podcast listener. Like what other like podcasts like do you kind of listen to kind of like get your knowledge, kind of get your news and stuff like that?
Yeah, I listen to podcasts 24/7. I have for
Same
a
here,
long
brother.
time.
Same here,
And again,
brother.
yeah, I guess that's where the ideas started going, probably since high school, honestly. But Bill Simmons, I love Bill Simmons. Ryan Russillo. I like to think that I go to different podcasts for different things, try to get well-rounded and touch on each base. But Bill Simmons is great. He throws out a bunch of different conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
He takes a different angle on sports, which I enjoy. Ryan Russillo. And then my more like straight edge podcast, I'd say, is Daniel Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Huge in the football community. He does a great job breaking things down. And, I like to use that to kind of sharpen up my knowledge, make sure that what I'm thinking isn't too far off base. It makes a little bit of sense. So I listen to those three guys a lot. A little bit of John Middlecoff, a little bit of Colin Cowherd. Again, just bringing in new voices, hearing different opinions. I love hearing everybody's opinion, having debates. It's just what I enjoy.
Yeah, and I'm like on the same wavelength as you. Like I used to listen to Bill Simmons podcast a lot. I've kind of switched to a lot of like the athletic, like podcasts such as like the Daily Dinger and the Daily Ding and stuff like that. And honestly, like that's like around the same thing. Like I kind of did the same thing, just to listen to a lot of podcasts, and then in my head, it's something clicked. And it's like, maybe I should start this off. It looks pretty fun. And I've been doing it for I think this is probably my third season in the NBA doing this too. So yeah, let's see. Like it's been like really fun, and just making these connections stuff has been awesome. I want to go back to something you said earlier, having those long debates and stuff, like with like your fans, obviously with your family and stuff. I've seen the stuff you've been doing on TikTok, man, and I'm like starting to like I'm gonna be starting my TikTok soon. I'm definitely gonna be dropping that like very soon. But you've been having these arguments with like some people, those debates and stuff like that. Why did you like choose TikTok, and like why has that been like one of your other like platforms to spread your your fandom?
Yeah, so to be quite honest, at first I was very hesitant. I had some followers telling me, hey, you've got to get on here. Some other podcasters were like, you've got to get on TikTok. There's so much engagement. Don't limit yourself, by saying, hey, TikTok's not for me. And so they ended up convincing me. And their advice, as well as I do like the engagement part that TikTok has, where you can stitch videos, you can duet. I feel like it's a little bit more engaging with other sports people, podcasters, content creators, as well as the followers. So I love it. And it's kind of turned into the debate platform for me, which I always enjoy having. It's never personal for me, right? I enjoy hearing somebody disagree, right? I'm interested on picking their brain, and maybe I can learn something out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been like, honestly, I've been like really enjoying them, because you have been like in debates with some of the guys I've like seen on TikTok and stuff like that. So seeing you kind of like on my For You page was kind of definitely a surprise to see and stuff like that. But those debates have been like honestly really funny, but also like really informative. I'm gonna like I have some kind of debate topics you had on your TikTok, and we should maybe like discuss it, because like they were like really interesting to me. A couple of them basketball, a couple of them football. I know I'm a basketball podcast, but football, it's still like up there for me as like one of the sports I want to watch. But here's some topics that you were debating earlier, like in the last over the last few weeks. One of them being Aaron Rodgers. You're talking about how he's like nowhere near. You think you said he's like nowhere near being the greatest of all time quarterback and stuff like that. Like, how did that start, and like what are you really like to summarize for like the viewers here? Like, why don't you think like he's like near the top of the list?
Okay, so first I have to preface this with overrated doesn't mean bad, right?
Oh yeah.
Like if I have him ranked as the 5th best quarterback of all time, let's say, and I'm hearing a lot of, oh, he's definitely the best of all time or number 2, then in my opinion, at least, that would be overrating him. Yeah. So for me, he is probably in that 5th to 7th range. And obviously he's in basically his extended prime. He's having an absolutely fantastic year, and I would expect him to improve that ranking. Now, the reason that I decided to make that video is, one, because I do believe that he is in that 5th to 7th range all time. And I am starting to see a lot of opinions about him being bare minimum top 3, if not already the GOAT. Yeah. And so that's the reason I was hoping for some great conversation on it. Yeah. I know there's different perspectives, right? So a lot of the people that are on that bandwagon, they like his efficiency numbers, which are extremely impressive. The fastest of 400 touchdowns this week, right? Yeah. Like, he is great. But to me, he does have some flaws. And again, in a greatest debate, I think there's some other factors that maybe you can't always quantify that hold value to me, at least. I mean, what did you think about that?
I honestly, like, I like you said, like, you're like a lot more knowledgeable of football than me. I started like watching football maybe 5-6 years ago, so I've seen like the best of Aaron Rodgers. He has killed my Cowboys on several like, he honestly, like, he appears in my nightmares as Cowboy fans. That first down throw to Jared Cook back in, I believe, 2016, 2017 still gives me nightmares to this day. But I kind of honestly, I kind of agreed with you there. Like, when you have like, the Drew Brees of the world, Tom Brady's, Joe Montana's, like, who are like a lot more prolific than Aaron Rodgers. Sure, maybe, like, I mean, obviously Aaron Rodgers' talent is kind of like up there with them, but I have to agree with you. I mean, I believe he has like one Super Bowl.
Yes, he has one. He's fell short in the playoffs a couple times. I know people will bring up the defensive deficiencies that the Packers have, which I get. And really, I guess the basis for my argument and why there was quite a bit of pushback. Some agreed, some didn't, but was because we often, as fans, or at least my opinion is, overvalue talent, right? Like, his talent, what he can do is eye-popping. And we tend to overrate that, in my opinion, a little bit. You'll hear people already saying that Patrick Mahomes is the best of all time, which, again, talent-wise, it's incredible what he's doing.
I've heard that a lot over the last few weeks as well, especially, for sure. Yeah, and like, and that's like honestly like a lot of things I have to talk to you about here because, like, when I was looking through your TikTok and stuff like that, like, you really did push that to the ground. Like, you were like, look, the talent obviously is extremely important, but the production on the field is like has to be like kind of supersede that, because like, what's the use of talent if you don't like produce like, Super Bowls, MVPs, all that good stuff. So as we move on to like the next topic, like, you also had like a debate with someone over like advanced stats, because I think like I know, like, because I've listened to like this guy, I believe his name is like 16 Games. I forgot his username, but he always like pushes to the ground like all these like analytics and stuff. And I remember like seeing one of your TikToks like kind of like refuting people who kind of like use analytics all the time. And I just want to like hear your thoughts like on this pod, like your thoughts are kind of like on how people kind of overuse analytics at this point.
Yeah, it's overuse, but to me, it's more like misuse. And there's a bit of misguidance as to what a lot of these analytics are, right? How they gathered, how do you draw conclusions from them, right? So what it stemmed from was overvaluing, at least in my opinion, EPA as a stat, which is an advanced analytic stat that adds value based on the situation, right? And a lot of the advanced analytics community, at least on TikTok in the NFL, was valuing some of those advanced analytics over touchdowns and turnovers.
Yeah.
And the argument was, advanced analytics have their place, but let's not forget the goal, right? Like, it's cool if you have high EPA which one, the plays that have the most added or negative value are going to be touchdowns or turnovers. So it was kind of like, let's not forget the big picture. And just like you mentioned, production at the end of the day is what holds the most value, right? That's what writes checks for people.
Yeah. And like I found it really interesting because I think even like in the basketball community especially, because analytics has kind of taken over the sport in my opinion, in the sense where you see people like the Houston Rockets over the past few years just go completely all in on like trying to like just outshoot people. And last year they even tried like going to the point where they had a freaking 6'5" center just so they can like just go, full analytics. And it honestly showed actually that you cannot like just rely fully on that. That's not going to win you championships. It's a nice precursor for something else, like to like give you information on something else. But we cannot be doing that to like, completely like kind of define the sport, if I were to say. And you really made like a lot of like good examples in that. Like, do you think like, especially like in the football community, I know there's a lot of pushback on analytics as well. Like, do you think like analytics will like kind of like take that next step in football, kind of like how they have done it in basketball?
It will. And I think the areas that you're going to start to see it affect the most is just like in the NBA with the cross era debates, because the new analytics, they're changing the game, right? So they're going to change the efficiency for these new players. Quarterback stats are absolutely exploding. So in 20 years, when let's say Patrick Mahomes is done with his career, his numbers are going to absolutely shatter all-time greats like, let's say, a Joe Montana. And it's going to be hard to compare somebody that has half the stats, but maybe equal the accolades. You're going to have to compare them to their peers. It's going to be pretty interesting. But you brought up a good point with the Houston Rockets. And to me, that's just a great example of blindly following the analytics. Right now, I get it's a little bit more complicated because you can't just go out and cherry pick. Oh, well, I'm sure they would take an Anthony Davis if they could have gotten a top center, right?
Yeah.
But to me, that's the short-sighted part of it. And of course, the three-point shot is so efficient, it's changed the game, but we can't forget how that data was collected was based on a more traditional lineup that is working towards that 3-point with the death lineup, stuff like that. That data wasn't collected with, like you said, PJ Tucker at the center, which it obviously changes the situation.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. Like I going just back, like just like kind of encompass all this. Analytics is great. Analytics is great, but we cannot, disregard, in the football sense, touchdowns, interceptions. Those are extremely important. We cannot minimize, the yards and all that. Like you cannot like just push away all these like the traditional stats in favor of these. Like they're just as important, and we kind of have to find a way to kind of merge it in the sense where we don't let analytics completely take over, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, or any other sport, honestly, in general. And I think it's like, and I think like what like analytics has done is like, I don't know if like you agree with me, but it kind of like takes away people from like actually like watching the game and stuff like that.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's part of the story. It's just not the whole story, right? And you said people don't watch the game, right? They just look at the box score and assume that all numbers are created equally. And the truth is they aren't, right? Because how those players execute and get those numbers is different, right? Like, so an example in the NFL is Blake Bortles, if you want to go back a couple years.
Oh my gosh.
He had a great year in garbage time. Like that just makes a difference. There's a difference between throwing a touchdown pass when you're down 3 scores late in the game and when the game's on the line and you're getting pressure instead of prevent soft zone coverage.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. And like I can like you talk about Blake Bortles. I mean, he like was like the Jacksonville quarterback for like a couple years until people realized how honestly he was garbage. He was garbage his last few years in the league. And I can like take some examples from the NBA. Like people like back then used to really value Hassan Whiteside as like one of those type of players, man. And they just look at the stats and stuff like that and they're like, yo, this guy is actually like a really good center. But honestly, he's just like he's lazy on defense. He doesn't really give effort. And that's just stuff you don't see on the box score, and it really does hurt your team.
Yeah, it's a great example. Hassan Whiteside is one that I've always been like, he's garbage.
Yeah.
I think the Blazers, the second they got
Yeah.
back Nurkic healthy,
Yeah.
all of a sudden Hassan Whiteside's getting DNPs because to me those are such empty stats.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I could go on for days about Hassan Whiteside. I just think that was a great example you brought up.
Yeah, and like you could just tell like by the value on his market, like on the market. Like if you look at his stats last year, I mean, he was like averaging basically 16 points a game, 14 rebounds, 4 blocks, and you look at those stats and you're like, man, this guy must be a monster. He goes to the Kings and he signs a minimum deal. He signs a minimum deal with the Sacramento Kings. Like, and I think people are, and then that's the type of stuff. Like, the stats aren't everything, and we just gotta like honestly, people just watch the game, man. Let's just watch it, and like you'll see like a lot more from like what you see from stats.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Signing with the minimum with the Kings is like one step before you're out of the league.
Yeah, I found it absolutely hilarious, and I was like having a couple of, like I was talking to some of like my friends about it. We're just like, oh my gosh, this guy literally got a max contract like what 3 years ago, and this guy's basically almost out the league, and he's like putting up these numbers. It's absolutely crazy. One more topic before we like head into like some more like NBA talk. One of the ones that really caught my eye, and this one is actually NBA related. You were talking about how Kevin Durant, like a lot of people were saying that Kevin Durant is the best scorer of all time and stuff like that. And you said that he's nowhere close. And that's where I kind of like have a problem. I'm like, okay. I know, okay, here's my thought on this. I like how you're thinking is, get the production. He doesn't have the numbers. He's kind of like I believe you compared it to Wilt, who had like multiple 30-point seasons, same thing with Michael Jordan. But I think this is like my argument with Kevin Durant is that I know you're not like a whole like talent is kind of like overrated here. Like where's the production? I just think that because of the way like he is built, the way he can shoot the ball, the way he can score from literally anywhere, you have to put him top five like in terms of just all time scoring. But you have him like you say like he's not even close. Where do you stand on that?
So I can see the argument for like a fringe top five. I
Yeah.
can also see the argument for like not even top 15. And again, I
Wow.
agree with you. Like the skill set is insane,
Yeah.
but the production is just not there. And especially when you compare him to his peers, right? And so that to me is kind of the other separating factor that, for example, those top two guys, at least in my opinion, Wilt and Michael Jordan, dominated their peers in that category. Kevin Durant hasn't as much. Now, again, I think his main argument past the skill set is the efficiency is through the roof. It's absolutely insane. The only thing I would say, again, to push back a little bit more is if we're going to say that as of now, right, he's still got a career left. Hopefully he comes back healthy.
Yeah.
If he's the best scorer of all time now, or even top two, top three, we have to accept, and plenty of people are probably fine with it, but in 10 to 20 years, there's going to be somebody that's better, right? Because as we've seen through the game, whether it's basketball, football, anything else, the skill sets only improve, right? There's going to be somebody doing what Kevin Durant is doing, except 2 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. But I think if I put it this way, like, would you say that? I have a statement here. Tell me if you agree or disagree. If you take away just like the best scorer of all time thing away from him, what if I told you that Kevin Durant is the most gifted offensive player of all time? What would you say to that?
Yes, I would say yes.
Yes.
I would say compared to his peers, like the gap between Kevin Durant and the other best scorers in the league is not as great as the gap was from Wilt and his peers and Michael Jordan and his peers. But just purely most gifted scorer, 100%. And if we played the time machine game and you dropped Kevin Durant in like 1980, he's probably going for 50 a night because they wouldn't know what to do looking at a guy that tall and having to guard him at 35 feet. Like they just wouldn't believe it's real.
Yeah, 100%, and especially because like he could shoot basically anywhere. He could finish at the rim, and just imagine him like honestly going up against like I don't know. You talked about the '80s, like him being basically taller than Kurt Rambis of the old like Lakers team, and being able to dribble, being able to shoot. Like it's honestly just like mind-boggling how this guy was made in a lab. It honestly feels like this guy was made in a lab.
No doubt, for sure. And I think the only way they would be able to stop him, speaking of Kurt Rambis, is like some clotheslines. That's about it. That's all you could do to stop Kevin Durant.
Oh yeah, 100%. And like I just think like maybe like like we kind of have like differing like opinions as to like how people maybe look at greatest scorer of all time. You definitely look at like I like the way you look at it in the sense where what is their gap between them and people in their era. And for sure, people like Michael Jordan, who had like a massive gap in terms of scoring, Will Chamberlain especially. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous how like the type of numbers he was putting up. So yeah, I definitely like your points there. Let's go into stuff about this NBA season. And with the NBA season starting up, I believe the preseason is starting up this Friday. It's just really weird how it feels like, you know, the NBA season just ended 2 months ago, the 2019-20 season with the Lakers winning the NBA championship. And now we're like 71 days removed from that. And we are now starting into the 2020-2021 season, which sounds unreal. I mean, how do you feel about the NBA season like starting up like right here, right now?
It feels like it's been a blur. It feels like the off season was the draft, free agency, and we're already here. It's pretty crazy as a Lakers fan.
Yeah.
I would have hoped we would have had a more traditional offseason after a championship, let it sink in a little bit more before you have to turn that page immediately. But it's been an absolute blur. And as you mentioned at the top, it's made for a great fall season of sports. I guess now we're trending into winter, but it's been action packed, which is great. I think we're in tune for another great NBA season with maybe my Lakers on top again.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into your Lakers and kind of like your thoughts on them like going forward. But with like, you know, these COVID cases still rising, I know, where are you from, by the way?
I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Raleigh, North Carolina. How are the cases going there, by the way? Like, are the cases kind of going up, kind of like going down, kind of like, how is it going over there?
They're going up, I think, just like pretty much everywhere is.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Who knows? I'm hoping for the best. Hopefully, like you mentioned, this vaccine will work wonders immediately.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. But in terms of like these sports like starting back up again, like I talked about, you know, the NBA going on right now, like do you think it'll go as this successful like do you think it'll be like going like smooth sailing, or do you think like there's gonna be like quite a number of cases that'll kind of devalue the season as per se?
Well, that's a great question because it's all going to be about the league and the players' mindset going into this.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure that they're as committed as the NFL is to getting this done. The NFL, as they've shown, the train is on the tracks. They are not stopping. They have the mindset, we're getting this season done no matter what, and the players are on board. Now, the players have less power in the NFL, so that's obviously part of it. But that paycheck means so much more in the NFL because a lot of those guys, one, are making way less money.
Yeah.
And two, their careers are 2 to 3 years on average. So if I lose a year, I may never come back, and I only made – I mean, it's a lot amount of money for 1 year, but if that's your career to be cut short, that's awful, right? So the NBA, I think that the league and the owners are going to want to do the same thing as the NFL in terms of adversity is going to come, right? Yeah. Players are going to test positive. The schedule is going to get rearranged. I think the NBA as a league is going to want to keep it moving. I think the players, because they have so much more power and a lot of those guys at the top have made so much money, I could see them causing the season to halt after about a month or two. Obviously would never hope for that. I hope for the best.
Yeah, 100%. And you talked about the NFL, and like that is like one of the biggest things about the NFL. The owners, the league is bigger than its players. In the NBA, you have the players having like all this power, like all these like type of protests, stuff like that. Like the NBA is behind its players. The NFL is there to protect their own like league, its owners, and everything. Like from a really big NFL fan, like do you consider the season to be a success thus far?
Oh yeah, it's been, I think, pretty much as good as you could have hoped for.
Yeah.
Again, I think the cases, the positive tests have been lower than I even expected, to be honest. I know there's been several, right? But I thought it'd be a little bit worse, to be honest. Yeah. And how they've managed the schedule, I think, has worked out really well. Again, a lot of your opinion on it is going to come from what perspective do you have. Yeah. And again, from the perspective of the NFL wanting to get all their games in and not have to stop, they've done a great job of executing their goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. I mean, there are obviously like those like really bad outbreaks, especially in Tennessee earlier in the season where they had, I believe, like over 20 cases, which was absolutely crazy. And then just recently, the stuff that's been going on with the Ravens and the Steelers and all that. But I definitely have to agree with you there. It's been a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I swear, like some of these teams haven't even had cases, which is absolutely crazy. So yeah, I mean, like if the NBA can have like anything similar to this, I'll take it. I mean, as an NBA fan, like as long as like people keep themselves in check, the teams do that. I definitely would want that to happen. But let's talk about like this actually transitions nicely because you talked about how the NBA make players like make a lot of money. They may like um how do I want to say this? They kind of like are not as like as alert as like the NFL players because like you said their careers are shorter and stuff like that. The NBA they feel like they're covered like for like a long time. And one of those players being James Harden. We got to talk about what's been happening over the past few days, which has been absolutely crazy. And basically, like the whole thing, like for the people who are watching, is that James Harden has not reported to training camp until today, which is absolutely crazy to me. I mean, the Houston Rockets has been doing training camp since Saturday, and James Harden has not been there. If you're on social media, he's been at birthday parties, at strip clubs, the things that James Harden likes to do. And what was the funniest thing about all this was that the day the NBA basically banned people from going to clubs and stuff, James Harden was like out partying and stuff like that. So a lot of people have been, um, criticizing him for that. I mean, what are your thoughts as a situation, like on this type of situation with James Harden?
I mean, it's interesting. I can't say I'm that surprised in
Yeah,
terms of, I think he's the undisputed GOAT of strip club attendance for
yeah,
NBA players. Like, I think
yeah,
he has that on wraps and
yeah,
nobody else comes close.
yeah,
But, it's pretty wild. And it goes to show kind of how far the pendulum has swung in favor of the players in terms of power.
yeah,
We're seeing players with multiple years left on their contract just be
yeah,
like, I'm not playing here. You've got to trade me. And I think it's smart in terms of if he's
business.
going to win,
Yeah,
right? Like if he's going to win, I think he has to get out of Houston at this
yeah,
point. Again, he's kind of probably on the last 2 years of his real prime.
yeah,
And I don't see Houston being able to get things in order to make a championship run with the way that the Lakers look right now. So
yeah,
I can't say I'm shocked. I'm really excited to see where he might end up. Do
yeah,
you think he's definitely getting traded? I guess maybe I'm just
yeah.
assuming too much there.
Yeah, it honestly feels like it. It really does, and it's mostly because I mean maybe it's James Harden's personality and stuff like that, but he really doesn't feel like he cares too much about like what's going on. I mean, I know a lot of people aren't really talking about this, but he's literally at birthday parties without a mask on, like interacting with all these people. That's kind of been pushed aside because of all the trades, the stuff with John Wall, the stuff with Russell Westbrook, that trade that just happened, and people are like not like really like until now being focused on James Harden. And a lot of people, I think, like as we look back these last few seasons with the Houston Rockets, I mean, their best chances against the Warriors, I think, a couple years ago when they had them like they were up 3-2, and after Chris Paul injury, that's when they kind of like folded and they lost. I mean, he drove Dwight Howard out of town earlier this decade. He drove Chris Paul out of town, and now it's Russell Westbrook. Like at this point, like, are you questioning like his like as like a fan, like are you questioning at least like maybe James Harden is a problem in Houston?
Oh, without a doubt. Now,
Yeah,
again, like I've been somebody that's been fairly critical of James Harden for 4 or 5 years now. I
yeah,
think there's been plenty of reasons to question his leadership
yeah,
on the court, and he's
yeah,
brought that off the court with the recent
yeah,
events that you brought up. But in his defense, I can't blame him for running Dwight Howard out of town. I think
yeah.
Dwight Howard kind of does that to himself, and he's been
Fair
from
enough.
place to place. I
Fair
don't
enough.
think the Lakers are going to miss him
Yeah,
this year. Chris Paul, I love Chris Paul, but he is a bit of a bulldog, so I think he is tough to get along with. And
yeah,
honestly, similarly with Russell Westbrook. So I think part of the getting along with teammates, I'll give him a little bit of the pass on. But in terms of the overall attitude, like you said, of not caring,
yeah.
some questionable things that he's done. I mean, I don't think it's outlandish to say that he's not doing what LeBron is doing to take care of his
Oh,
body.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I swear, like I swear, like over, like I think it was like a couple years ago, like there's been like those memes all over the internet of James Harden and his body and stuff like that. I mean, compared to the rest of the NBA, I mean, yes, he has that scoring ability, but he's definitely not like in the type of shape as a LeBron James and like or some of these other guys around the league. But
What
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, and then to compound that, I don't know if you've seen on social media and whatnot. This is probably more last off
Yeah.
season, but his style with kind of they're like the tights
Oh
and
my
the big
gosh.
white
Yeah.
T-shirt, like
Yeah.
that's just not helping you out, man.
Yeah. 100%. I definitely do. I mean, maybe that was Russell Westbrook rubbing off on him or something, but it just definitely that doesn't work for him. Let's be honest, that just doesn't work for him. Before we move on to the next topic, I know you're a coach, you're like a football coach, stuff like that. How much of a pain would it be if you had someone like a James Harden on your team? Like, how would you kind of like put out the discipline and stuff like that?
That's so tough. Again, it's hard to relate because in the NBA they have no power, right?
Yeah,
Like we've seen these stars control the franchises. They've moved past, kind of controlling the coaches, getting who they want in. It's like on a franchise level now.
yeah,
But I mean, in my opinion, that team culture matters more than any one player. And I know in the NBA, you've got to have an absolute elite star to win a championship. But to me, a player like James Harden is fool's gold,
yeah.
right? Like he's great, but at least in my opinion, you're never winning a championship with him,
As
at
your number one
least,
guy.
yeah, at least with his current attitude,
Yeah,
right? So I think it'd be worth it to get your team culture right first
yeah,
and then make sure that everybody's in line with that because until that happens, I don't see a player like James Harden being a winning player. And I've caught some flack for that, for saying that about multiple players. And it's not a personal attack in any way. I
yeah,
just don't believe that they really play winning ball. I've said similar stuff about like D'Angelo Russell,
yeah,
Carl Anthony Towns. They're
yeah.
absolutely fantastic players and talents. I just question how much they're really using that to work towards winning.
Yeah, yeah. I also have like a lot of my like you mentioned Carl Anthony Towns. That's like one of the guys I've been kind of like bashing on recently because he is seen as a top three, top five center, but he just doesn't have like the type of production that can like lead a team to a playoff appearance. Like he hasn't even. I think the only time they've made the playoffs is when they had Jimmy Butler on their team. And let's be honest, that was Jimmy Butler's team. That was nowhere near Cat's team at that point. So, yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. I mean, we've seen enough of James Harden to know that look, him as the number one guy is just not going to win a championship, and this is just kind of like piling on him at this point. So yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. Do you think this is degrading his trade value in like any sense? Like if they're trying to trade him like all these like different events?
Yeah, without a doubt. And anytime a top elite star gets traded, you're never going to get fair value back. It's just
Yeah,
not going to happen
yeah,
unless you get a ton of picks and then maybe, you hit the lottery and get one of those
yeah,
perfectly right. But just realistically, anytime you trade a star, you don't get fair value back. His actions right now are definitely devaluing his
yeah,
trade value because in a couple different facets, right? Once everybody knows that a player wants out, they're
yeah,
not going to trade as much for that because the Houston Rockets, at least as of now, are kind of between a rock and a hard place, right? They're
yeah,
almost having their hand forced. And then I know he's eased off of just trade me to the Brooklyn Nets, but even still, I know he mentioned the 76ers.
yeah,
When you just have a couple options to work with, you don't really have anybody to bid against each other.
yeah,
So it's definitely going to take down his value. I think the Rockets' best chance, at least off the top of my head, to get
yeah,
quality value is to get Ben Simmons
yeah.
and hopefully like a first round pick or two. And I think that's about the best they could do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, at this point, I mean, like, I really like the point you made there. I mean, like, you're really not going to get value for like anytime like a superstar star player is traded, you're just not going to get the value back. You can look at trades like with Kawhi Leonard. Like, let's be honest, DeMar DeRozan and Jakob Poeltl is nowhere near a Kawhi Leonard type package. Same thing with Anthony Davis. I mean, I think that's probably like the top tier. Like, that's what you're hoping to get if you're trying to like ship out a superstar. I mean, getting back people like Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, and what like 10 like 5 first round picks out of it. I mean, that's probably the best you're going to get out of superstars. So I really like what you said there. And honestly, that Ben Simmons trade, I mean, I have to agree with you. It's just probably the best you're going to get at this point. Speaking of the Lakers, I mean, you said you're a huge Lakers fan. I'm assuming you're over the moon after that big championship they won last year. But firstly, how are your thoughts on that? Like, how are your thoughts on like you guys winning the championship?
It was a great championship. And to be honest, it was easier than I thought it would be. I had always
Oh,
predicted the Lakers. Now, I can't lie. I didn't always feel great about it. It kind of went up and down a little bit. But that playoff run, I think being in the bubble really helped them. It seemed like their role players got it going late as they made their playoff push. And their size was a major factor. I
yeah,
think, again, we saw the LeBron factor into the equation as always. He's just, in my opinion, he raises the floor so high for your
yeah,
team. And just individually, his performance, even his bad games, aren't
yeah,
bad games. They're still really good. Anthony Davis, I thought, took a step, proved something to the
yeah,
league that he can carry the load in a playoff game if need
yeah.
be. So I think the Lakers have to be feeling the best out of any team in the league right now.
Yeah, 100%. And to the people who like, for the fans who like to like devalue their championship, saying, "Oh, it's a Mickey Mouse ring. It's happened in the bubble. This championship doesn't count." What do you say to those fans?
Hey, I say I'll take it. Again, we'll take the one and only Mickey Mouse championship. That's fine too.
Yeah,
We'll claim that, and we can be the only team to have one of those. In my opinion, it's not tainted. We have 17 championships
yeah,
tied for the most in NBA history,
yeah,
so I'm feeling good.
yeah. I definitely have to agree with you there. I never really like got the argument of them saying, it's a bubble ring and something that doesn't really count. I think if you just go through like the same hardships, I mean, the Lakers have to go through hardships. All those teams in the bubble have to go through their own hardships. It counts as a ring no matter what. For this upcoming season, do you see them as the favorites, or do you think like there's like and if you don't, like who are kind of like their biggest competitors coming into this season?
I think they're the clear cut favorite. Of course,
Yeah,
things can change, and unfortunately, too often in the NBA, we see injuries be a
yeah,
major factor, major separating factor between
yeah,
those top three or four teams. But to me, the Lakers are the clear cut favorite. I think the East is going to be really competitive for the top four seeds. And I mean, I can't rule out the Clippers,
yeah,
but they have a lot of soul searching to do. They've got to prove it before I'll put any stock in them. And then, unfortunately, what we saw with Klay Thompson, I was pretty big on the Warriors coming into this season rebounding. I thought they were going to be a top three seed at least, and then be a team to push for the Western Conference Finals and further. So it's unfortunate seeing that. And then, to be honest, after that, I just don't see somebody that can truly challenge the Lakers if they're fully healthy.
yeah. Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I have the Warriors were one of my top teams as well, with Klay Thompson coming back and kind of that camaraderie they had with their team. Now that he's out, the Warriors have definitely slipped in my like standing predictions for sure. The East is going to be extremely interesting. We don't know how good the Bucks are going to be going into next year. Hopefully, like the moves that they made are going to actually like benefit their team and actually like make them go to the finals. We don't know what's going to happen with the Miami Heat. The Boston Celtics are definitely going to be in the mix, and obviously the Brooklyn Nets with KD and Kyrie are obviously going to be massive, just blocks in the way for the Lakers. But yeah, I have to agree with LeBron James and Anthony Davis on that team. And let's be honest, they have a better team this year, which is really, really surprising. Especially coming off a championship, bringing in Dennis Schroeder, bringing in Montrezl Harrell, even stealing Pau Gasol away from my Toronto Raptors, man. Like that was like that kind of hurt a little bit, but yeah, they definitely are the favorites going forward. I'm gonna hold you out here for another like 5 minutes or so as we talk about our final topic here for the podcast, and it has to do with something that got released today. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but this is just too like newsworthy not to talk about. The ESPN released their first half of their top 100 players in the league. They're gonna release the top 50 next week, but they have like with every list ESPN does, man. They just do it for the clicks, and it's honestly like lots of controversy. There's always going to be debate around them. I know you've only seen a part of the list. Like, what have your thoughts like been so far on it?
Yeah, so obviously the one that stuck out to me was Lonzo Ball above players, I believe, like Zach LaVine,
Yeah,
D'Angelo Russell, which I think that is too high. I will say I don't think it's as crazy as some people do. I know some people that consider Zach LaVine to be more towards a top 30 player, which he's definitely not in my mind.
No.
That definitely stuck out, as well as KCP. And that was probably the craziest one to me, is KCP falling in like the 70s there.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, again, he had a great little playoff run down the stretch there. He came up big for the Lakers. Give him the credit, but I don't know about that ranking.
Yeah, I mean, like, those are the two ones I had in mind. I mean, just like seeing KCP over some of these people on this list, man. I mean, DeMar DeRozan, someone who's been like a multiple-time All-Star. It feels really weird to see him there. Seeing him ahead like of players like John Collins, who's put up like 20 and 10 in this league, and just like, I don't know.
Well, to me, it's just like, imagine the Spurs just having KCP instead of DeMar DeRozan. Like,
oh my
KCP, your team leader. Like, just imagine that. Like, that's where the ranking's just off.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just don't know what goes into this criteria. Like, I'm just like, right now, I'm like, I have the list like on another screen, and I'm like, okay, I mean, Duncan Robinson, yeah, he's a good player, but he's a shooter. Like, he's really just a shooter, and you have him 75th over DeMar DeRozan and stuff like that. Even like, I don't know, man. Like, there's just like so many. Like, I'm gonna give you some players here, and I'm gonna tell you like where they rank, and just tell me like if you think they're too high, too low, or just right. Okay, you go with that?
I'm good with that. One last thing, can I actually just say,
go.
I feel like what had to have gone into these rankings, at least for KCP, and again, I don't want to dog the guy, but like whoever was deciding that must have had underneath KCP's name championship, NBA championship winner. And like that's just the only reason that he's fell at that spot.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you some names. I'm gonna like tell you their ranking, like who they're above. Do you think they're like too high, too low? Just let me know. So first player I have here, like I said, John Collins. This guy is averaging 20 points a game, 10 rebounds for the Atlanta Hawks. This guy is below people like Duncan Robinson, like KCP, like Josh Richardson. Do you think John Collins is too low, too high, just right?
I think he's too low. Just a little bit. I think the potential is through the roof. And I would expect big things from him this upcoming season. I think that's a little bit too low, particularly with some of those guys, because he's filling a larger role. And I think that has to be taken into account.
Yes, 100%. I have him too low as well. I mean, I don't know. These names here, it just baffles me that these names are kind of ahead of people like him. Another player I have here, he is like the number one player on this list. He's number 51. We have Michael Porter Jr., and for someone who's only played 30 games of his NBA career, and they have him over people like DeAndre Ayton, Zach LaVine, and stuff like that. Do you think he's too high, too low, or just right?
I mean, I see the potential, but to me, that's too high. Again, I get it, and it won't shock me if after this season, people are like, oh, yeah, okay, he's definitely that good. But to me, they're overvaluing the talent again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That goes with the whole thing with you, man. I mean, MPJ is a perfect example of that. He has the talent, but he has definitely not have the production. A few other interesting ones here. Davis Bertans. This guy is a three-point sniper for the Washington Wizards. He was in the three-point contest last year. Got a massive contract this year, 5 years, $80 million. ESPN has him as the 61st best player over players such as Kevin Love, Blake Griffin, like I said, DeMar DeRozan, Eric Bledsoe, D'Angelo Russell. Do you think he's too high? And secondly, do you think I'll go with the second question afterward, but do you think he's too high?
I would say he's too high, but again, maybe I'm just a little bit behind on the advanced analytics. I'm sure that's the argument for him, right? Yeah. Like on the Houston Rockets would probably draft him with like the first overall pick because of his ability to shoot the threes, right? Like, so again, I might be wrong, but to me, that's too high.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you this question because over this offseason, we saw two really good three-point shooters get massive deals, and Joe Harris getting a 4-year, $78 million deal, and Davis Bertans getting a 5-year, $80 million deal. And I've talked to this with a couple people, but I haven't got to really talk about it on the show. But do you think the NBA in general are just overvaluing these shooters and giving them massive money, like compared to those, I mean, let's be honest, like these guys, like main calling card is them shooting. Like, do you think their like high tier shooting ability like warrants the paycheck?
No, overall, and especially in isolation. That player in isolation is not worth the contract. If you've got them in the perfect situation where they don't need to create, they don't need to be one of your best wing defenders, I can get it. But, I think who's got to be the happiest about this is Duncan Robinson has got to be just extremely happy seeing these contracts get floated out. And I don't need to dribble. I don't need to create at all. Like, just run me off screens. Obviously, he could do a little bit more than that. Don't get me wrong. And he's got the quickest trigger maybe in the league. It's impressive, but he's got to be happy seeing those contracts.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. It just like really just honestly just surprised me seeing like those massive numbers, like for these guys who, I mean, like I said, they're just like mainly 3-point shooters, but it just kind of shows like what type of direction the NBA is trending to. And like, analytics, 3-point shooting, like that is what's extremely valued here. And like you said, Duncan Robinson, man, he's licking his chops right now, looking at like the money that the Heat are probably going to give him in the next like 1 or 2 seasons. So he definitely should be happy about that. Before we end the show, man, I'm not going to give my finals prediction just yet, but because you're a new guest on the show, because the NBA season is coming soon, what do you have as your prediction for this upcoming NBA Finals?
I've got the Lakers for sure.
Yeah.
I feel confident. I don't think that's too much of a homer pick, but I think the Lakers are the only contender that definitively got better. Now, the one pushback I will say, I think Montrezl Harrell does more for the Lakers in the regular season than he does the postseason, just like he did for the Clippers. Out of the East, I think the Nets have a lot of talent, but to me, that's definitely wait and see. I think the Celtics are a team that could rebound after maybe a disappointing past couple seasons. I think they're a team that could rebound and maybe make it out of the East.
So your final prediction is Lakers versus Celtics, if I hear you correctly.
Yep, as of December 8th, lock it in.
Lock it in, yeah. And if they were to go to a series, how many games would you have the Lakers winning in?
Ooh, I'm going to say 6. I don't think it gets to 7. I think 6. I think, Anthony Davis is going to have a big game 6 to close it out.
I know. I can't believe it. It's weird talking about this in freaking December, but that is Brian's early season, preseason prediction for the NBA Finals. Thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. We'll do this again. I got to get you on my show.
100%. Before we sign off, just give like any news about your like upcoming podcast and stuff like that. Just drop whatever you need to drop like before we head out.
Yeah, definitely go follow me at BolsteredUpSports, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok now, as we talked about a little bit. I've got a lot of episodes going to be coming out, mainly on the NFL season. I'm actually interviewing a arena football player who we're going to talk a little bit about his journey trying to make it to the NFL, how obviously his season's been derailed and, just about his passion. So I'm looking forward to that interview that I'm going to do tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to have all of his links down in the description of this video. And also, if you click my link tree, if you are seeing the preview of this on Instagram, remember to click that link tree. I have all of his links there as well. And once again, man, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. And this is where we're going to sign out, guys. Thank you guys for watching or listening. Remember to show love on all the podcast channels, Apple, Spotify, Podbean, Anchor. That would be very much appreciated. Like, share, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for some great content. Once again, thank you to Brian for coming on the pod. It was a really fun episode to record, and I would love to have him on another time, especially with the NBA season coming up. Lots of great podcasts for you over the next week. I'm going to be doing my Eastern Conference predictions on Monday, another YouTube exclusive next Wednesday, and we're going to have another guest come on next Friday. So if you guys want to just continue to show your support, that'd be very much appreciated. I appreciate all of you who are taking time out of your day to watch or listen to this. And yeah, thank you again to Brian for coming on, and I hope all of you have a fantastic day. Take it easy, guys.